listener production.
Hi, Natarsha Belling with you and welcome to the afternoon edition of The Briefing. Coming up in our deep dive, it's one of the biggest jewellery heists in history. Robbers busting into the Louvre Museum in Paris just after it opened and stealing priceless royal jewels. The whole operation taking just 4 minutes before the offenders escaped on scooters. So how did this happen? Was it an inside job? And where will the precious jewels end up? All those details coming up. But first, let's check the afternoon headlines this Monday, the 20th of October. 2 people have been killed after a cargo plane skidded off the runway into the ocean at Hong Kong International Airport. The aircraft which was landing was a Boeing 747 freighter operating under an Emirates flight number. It had 4 crew members on board, all of whom were rescued. 2 airport security staff on the ground died. The airport and Hong Kong Civil Aviation Department are both investigating. Another major test for Gaza's fragile ceasefire after Israeli forces launched a wave of deadly airstrikes claiming Hamas militants had killed 2 soldiers. Health officials in Gaza say at least 36 Palestinians were killed, including children, as Israel struck dozens of targets across the territory. An Israeli security official confirmed that aid deliveries were briefly halted but said they would resume Monday and that the ceasefire is back in force. And British police are investigating allegations that Prince Andrew asked an officer to dig up damaging information on Virginia Giuffre, who accused him of sexual assault. Prince Andrew renounced his royal titles over the weekend under pressure from King Charles after revelations about his connections to the late US sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. London's Metropolitan Police confirmed it's actively looking into claims that Prince Andrew provided Miss Giuffre's date of birth and social security number to his taxpayer-funded police protection and asked them to investigate her. The officer is not believed to have acted on that request. Biographer Andrew Lowney, who wrote a book on Prince Andrew earlier this year, says these latest allegations are damning.
To use the police to spy on other people, it's abuse of data protection and all sorts of rules. And, again, it's a sense of entitlement that because he might be able to do it, he did it.
Prince Andrew has always denied the sexual assault allegations made by Virginia Giuffre. Now it's time to get into our deep dive on the Louvre jewellery heist in Paris. It's one of the biggest and most daring robberies in history. Art crime expert Judge Arthur Tomkins joins us to explain why he believes it could have been an inside job, why so many art galleries and museums around the world have serious gaps in their security systems, and the fascinating motives authorities will be looking at. Arthur, thanks so much for joining us. This, many are saying, is straight out of a Hollywood movie. From what we can understand, investigations are very much in the initial stage, but these alleged offenders, broke in through a side window into the Louvre with a chainsaw.
Well, from what's been publicly released, they used an extendable ladder, which they drove through Paris, parked the vehicle parallel to the side of the Louvre which faces the Seine, ran the ladder up, climbed up the ladder onto a balcony. So there was a balcony outside the window. And then they broke in through the window, not sure how they did that. And then they used, from the reports thus far released, rechargeable diamond-tipped cutting grinders to break in or cut the glass cases containing these jewels and then went out the way they came. And the timing seemed to have been about 4 minutes inside the Louvre, 7 minutes in total from beginning to end, which is actually not all that unusual for art theft. The whole point about stealing art is that it's easily portable and you can get into museums and out again very quickly. You don't have to spend a very long time in an underground vault loading up very heavy gold bars or anything like that. It's very movable. And then they left, it seems, on scooters, which if you've ever driven in Paris is a way smarter move to get through the Parisian traffic than ordinary cars. And the thought did occur to me, they didn't do this until about 9:35, and I wonder whether they were delayed by traffic getting there because the museum had opened at 9:30. It does seem slightly odd that they would break in after the museum opened, but who knows?
Arthur, it would have to be one of the most secure museums in the world, considering the enormity of the artwork that is stored within the Louvre in Paris. May seem like a silly question. Why didn't alarms go off or security officers see the security vision?
Alarms did go off and there was CCTV footage. But museums all over the world, and the Louvre is no exception, they have a curatorial paradox. So they've got a fixed budget. And you can spend your budget on making the artworks accessible, which the museum clearly wants to do. They want to make them accessible to the visiting public. Or you can make them very secure. And the Mona Lisa is a prime example. It's now behind bulletproof glass. It's very, very secure. Or you can spend your money on provenance research, or you can spend your money on conservation, or you can spend your money on the upkeep of the building. There are all sorts of calls on museums' budgets. And there are very, very few museums who, for all of their collections, have the same high level of security as, in hindsight, it would have been nice to have. So the museum is huge, it's sprawling, it's old, it's got all sorts of side doors and side entrances and ways in and out and that sort of thing. It's not as if it was a purpose-built building designed with security in mind. They've had a few thefts from the Louvre over the years. The most famous one, 1911, when Vincenzo Peruggia hid in a cupboard overnight, walked out with the Mona Lisa under his coat. The Mona Lisa was then missing from memory, about 3 years. So, the Louvre is not the most secure museum.
We would all think that security would be top of the agenda because so much of its contents are priceless. Now, talking about what these thieves stole, they have been labelled as priceless because they're these extraordinary jewels from one of the original royal families. Is that correct? Can you unpack exactly what was stolen?
Yes. Essentially, they're part of the French crown jewels. There are probably 3 main possible motivations. The most likely one is they've already been broken up. The precious metals have been melted down. The gems are probably on their way if they're not already in Amsterdam or somewhere like that, and they've been sold. It's possible that somebody might be using them as collateral to fund some sort of illicit activity, because after all, it would be fairly easy now for the thieves to go around and say, look, the media are saying these jewels that we have worth 100 million euros or whatever, so you keep them, you lend us money, we'll undertake whatever illicit importation into France we have in mind, and if it all goes wrong, you can keep the jewels. The most unlikely, in fact, I'd be prepared to say it would never be a commissioned theft to a private collector, simply because these jewels are so well known, so well documented. No matter how obsessive a collector was, that is very, very unlikely.
Arthur, you mentioned before the Mona Lisa was eventually recovered after it was stolen from the Louvre in the early 1900s. What do you think the chances are of any of these extraordinarily expensive jewellery items will ever be recovered in their original form? You're thinking they've already been broken down and melted down and sold on?
If they were going to recover them, it would have been in the first hour, maybe 2 hours after the theft. The time that has passed means that the chances of recovery plummet with every passing hour.
One of the reports, Arthur, after the offenders escaped on the scooters, the motorbikes through Paris, is apparently authorities found one of the crowns literally on the ground that by mistake it looks like these offenders have dropped. Does that seem to you these guys may be amateurs?
No, I wouldn't say amateurs, but adrenaline does weird stuff. It's possible that they targeted what they had on their list first and put it into bags and things, and they just grabbed that as they were leaving to jump out the window. If there are a couple of other things, the police will be looking very carefully at inside help. Almost every art museum theft involves some form of inside assistance, whether that's to do with disabling security cameras or providing information as to security guards' timings and rounds and which rooms they go into and when and in what order and that sort of thing. So the police will certainly be looking at that. The speed with which this occurred is indicative that this is not these guys' first rodeo.
No, 4 minutes, incredible.
Yeah.
It's interesting you mentioned there, Arthur, about inside job, because one may argue, although the security isn't as good as it should be, obviously, that it looks like they've had some form of inside information.
Yeah. And I mean, after all, anybody can buy a ticket and wander through the Louvre. So another thing that the police will be doing is they will be trying to recover as much as possible from the CCTV, from the entrances, so that if they do even get a whisper of who it might be, they can start looking through the CCTV, because you would expect that within a reasonable time, so a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, somebody has wandered through that gallery, just checking out where things are, what distances they are, where the particular items that they were after, which of the cases they were in, that sort of thing.
In regards, Arthur, to, you mentioned before the Louvre has been targeted on many different occasions. No exact price has been put on the amount of items that have been stolen this time. But in regards to, things that have been stolen from museums and art galleries over the years, where does this latest one rank?
Oh, it would be up in the top 10. Generally, the most valuable art museum burglary is reckoned to be the Isabella Stewart Gardner thefts from the Fenway in Boston. And again, they're still missing, never been recovered. And that's generally reckoned to be the most valuable art theft from a museum in history.
It is an extraordinary story. We really appreciate you joining us this afternoon with your insight. Thanks, Arthur.
That's a pleasure.
That was art crime expert Judge Arthur Tomkins. And that's it for this episode of the afternoon edition of The Briefing. We'd love you to subscribe or follow us on Instagram at The Briefing Podcast. And we'll be back in your feed tomorrow morning. I'm Natarsha Belling. Thanks for your company.